Hi there, it's Jennifer, and I hope you're having a great day. I thought I'd share with you how I do multi-inking with a MISTI stamping tool. Now, you don't have to have the MISTI. Any kind of stamping tool would be helpful here, but you could do without if you wanted to. I'm going to show you how to get realistic looks with the multi-inking. Now, I am using a stamp set today from Sunny Studios called Holiday Style, and I'll be honest, it's a hard one to get your hands on these days because it's been in such demand, but it is a great set. I plan to even use it again next year. In the stamp set, there are the images necessary to create a layered bell, bow, and ornament, along with all the elements to go with it. I'm also using a sentiment from this My Favorite Things stamp set. I just think they're beautiful, and I'll use another sentiment later on from a Write at Home stamp set. In my MISTI, I have a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch white piece of cardstock, and I just laid out all my images on the white cardstock just so I could plan out where they're going to end up. Then I just took them out and started with the first element, and that's this little pine piece. I'm inking it up with a green ink and stamping it onto the white cardstock. I'm making several cards at once, so you'll see me repeat each of the steps. It really doesn't take that much longer to just stamp it again once you have everything positioned just right. So I'm going through and stamping with this kind of Kelly Green Simon Says Stamp dye ink. You could use any dye ink you want to here. So after I have them all stamped, I wanted some dimension to that. It's pretty flat. It's just that one solid green color. So I thought I would break out my tombow markers, which are great for stamping with. I have like an olive green or forest kind of green, and I'm just coloring it onto the stamp towards the center, towards where the branch would be, and stamping that on top. That makes it darker in that area. And I'm going to do that a couple times on each. It's amazing the difference that it makes, the depth that it adds to the image. You can see I'm not being very careful to make it perfect. You really don't need to. Now I'm going in with a brown marker and just coloring along the branch itself very quickly. You don't need to like blow on this or breathe on this to keep the ink alive. It seems to last as long as you need to go ahead and stamp it. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp that a few times and look at that depth that you get. Now, if you don't have a stamp positioner, you can just look through your clear acrylic block to make sure that you stamp it in the exact same place every time. But you can see how a stamping tool makes a big difference. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat that on all of my panels. Okay, so now it's time to add the bell or ornament to each of the cards. I'm going to start with the bell first. So I have it positioned where I want it, and I'm starting with the lightest ink with the most solid image first. This is Hero Art's Soft Granite. I found that if I used grays and black to stamp the layers of the bell, it looks like a silver bell. It's absolutely beautiful. If you wanted to do a gold bell, you could do soft sand along with like a regular brown ink and then a super dark brown ink on top. But I wanted to go for silver today. The next layer of the silver, I'm stamping with the Hero Arts charcoal ink. And then the final layer, I'm going to stamp with the Hero Arts black dye ink. It's amazing how realistic this looks once you have all the layers stamped on top of each other. Now, I've been a fan of layering stamp sets for some time because they're so realistic, but this one by far is the best that I've seen. Okay, so now it's time for a sentiment. I'm going to do a different sentiment on each card. This one is from a My Favorite Things sentiment stamp set, and I am going to stamp this with my favorite Christmas red color, which is Lawn Fawn Lobster ink. So I'm going to stamp this, and if you don't have a good Christmas red, you could always double stamp to make the ink darker. Here I double stamped it because I didn't do a good job inking it the first time around. And you can just keep stamping on top of each other with the MISTI to end up with a darker color. Now I wanted to show you another trick that you can do with any stamp, and that is to heat emboss it after the fact. So I'm putting into my MISTI the sentiment and the branch exactly lined up with my images. I just lay them right on top, then close the door on it. I'm also going to do the biggest bottom layer of the bell. Now what I'm going to do here is make sure my stamps are as clean as I can get them, and then ink them up with Versamark ink and stamp them. So basically I'm making all of those images a little sticky, and then I'll add embossing powder on top. Now I could have used pigment inks in the first place or done the Versamark and then put the ink on, but I like to do it separately. I think it gives better results. So I'm using my anti-static powder tool over the whole piece, and then I'll ink up with Versamark ink and stamp right on top. It's really easy to line up, and I can do them all at once using the MISTI stamping tool. So now I'm going to add some Hero Arts clear embossing powder. You could also use like a glitter embossing powder here if you wanted to. So now I'm going to take my heat gun, and after allowing it to warm up for a little bit, I'll bring it to the paper so I can emboss all that embossing powder. And now what I have is, instead of just a flat card, I now have a slightly raised, shiny look to all of the stamping that I did. It makes a big difference. You could leave it without the embossing, but this is a fun trick to kind of take any of your one-layer cards and add a little bit of interest. It especially makes that bell look very realistic, so you could just heat emboss the bell if you wanted to. Now on this other example, I stamped again on top of everything with Versamark ink, and this time I'm adding some of the clear glitter embossing powder. This is Judican's iridescent embossing powder, so this will give a little bit more interest because there's glitter in it. I'll be honest, I like the bell better without the glitter on it, but all the other elements look great with the glitter, so you could do a little bit of both. Next, I just wanted to quickly show you how the the ornament looks when you stamp all the layers together. I'm stamping the bottom layer with Hero Arts Pale Tomato ink. This is a great soft red ink. I double stamped it because, again, I was inking it too quick and didn't make sure I completely covered it. You can also make it darker again by double stamping it if you want to. Now the next layer I'm going to stamp with the Lawn Fawn Lobster Red again. Remember, that's my favorite go-to Christmas red color. Now I also stamped the little top for the ornament, and I did this with soft granite, and I double stamped it just to make it a little bit darker. Now we can make this look metallic a few different ways. One would be to cover the ornament and all the pieces with some Spectrum Noir shimmer pen or Wink of Stella shimmer pen. But again, I decided to go with the clear heat embossing instead. Now there are different layering elements for the ornament itself, so I'm layering the little top for it, and I'm going to put real string on it. I just thought that would add a fun little element, but there are little hooks included in the stamp set that you could stamp if you wanted to instead. Now in this one, I decided to use a sentiment from this Right at Home stamp set. I really like this one that says, "Wishing you a season of blessings." It's a nice one that you could kind of use throughout the holiday season and not necessarily just for a Christmas card. I'm doing the same thing I did with the other cards, where I'm stamping right on top with Versamark ink. This is a great way to get a black heat embossed looking sentiment without having to use black powder. Sometimes black powder can be a complete mess to work with. So sometimes it's best to first stamp with a black ink, then do Versamark right on top, and then clear powder. Or you could stamp with the black pigment ink, like VersaFine black pigment ink, and put clear powder on top of that. To be honest with you, I didn't know that I was going to add the clear powder to this one, so that's why I started with the dye ink and did the Versamark on top. Now it's time to add the string that will hang our bell to the pine. So I poked a hole at the top of the ornament. I'm using a T-roller to make sure that it's hanging straight and poking a hole at the pine itself. Now I'm going to weave some silver thread through there. I wanted to use silver thread so that there wouldn't be any bulk. I find it easiest just to tape this off in the back. It will be sandwiched onto a card, and then I just create a bow with the thread itself and glue that to the front. I find that so much easier than trying to weave it through and then tie a bow on the top all in one piece. This way it'll look like it's all connected, but it really isn't. I'm going to go ahead and do the same with all of the other cards also. So I have some red top folding note cards that I created. And by the way, before I did the stitching, I did trim down my stamped panels to be about 4 by 5 1/4, so that a little bit of that red note card would show. I'm also gluing a smaller piece of white craft foam in between each of them. So I've already glued them to the back of all of the stamp panels here, so that everything would be lifted ever so slightly from the front of our card, and it would hold up nicely through the mail. To finish off the cards, I need to add that little bow at the top of my ornament and on the top of the bell. Now you could totally skip this if you wanted to. That would save you some time. But I'm just taking that silver thread and tying a bow between my fingers. It's just kind of floating. I make the loops really big, and then I just pull the ends to make the loops a little bit smaller, and then I just keep playing with it until it's tightened. Then I use just a tiny dot of Ranger Multi-Medium and a matte finish, and I glue that to the top of the ornament. It's amazing how such a tiny little dot of this adhesive will hold that little bow in place. That way it looks like we tied that whole ornament onto the branch with one piece, but this is so much easier. Now these cards will be going to the Caring Hearts card drive. These are cards that we collected to pass out in nursing homes around the holidays. The Caring Hearts card drive is over now. We collected a ton of cards. I'll share more about that soon. But these are mine that I'm going to take to my local nursing home. So I decided to white heat emboss the hello sentiment on the front of each of the envelopes. And that way I have a little something special on the front. This is really easy to do with a bunch of envelopes all at once if you use the MISTI stamping tool. Now I'm white heat embossing this on the red, so I'm sure to use that anti-static powder tool or I'll get that white powder everywhere. And notice I'm doing the stamping on all of them and adding the embossing powder on all of them all at once. Then once they're all done, I'll heat set them all at one time. This saves me a lot of time. Instead of doing the heat setting each individual envelope, I just do them all at once. It won't dry. It'll be perfectly fine to do that. So there we have the finished product. And by the way, these envelopes are like a red metallic. Got these from Simon Says Stamp. I'll link to the source for those. And there we have a few Christmas cards ready to go. I hope these tips of layering inks and doing heat embossing on top is helpful to you. Remember to use those markers to add those additional colors. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in the products, they're linked below in my YouTube description, or you can go to my blog for much more. And in the middle are 2 other videos that might be of interest to you. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you soon.